$10,000 here. If this is all I had to work with, how would I turn this into $1 million? You know, the reality is, if you work hard and you save money, you can get $10,000. And if you're smart with it, you can turn it into $1 million. But let's start with what most people do with $10,000 that they've saved up. The first thing that they do is they just spend it, right? They upgrade their lifestyle. They're like, I've got some leftover money. I'm gonna go after my instant gratification. I'm gonna take a trip. I'm gonna upgrade my car. I'm gonna upgrade my pad. So that's what many people would do. But then on the other extreme, you've got the savers, right? The penny pinchers. These are the people that are like, we don't have nice things because we're always saving for safety or the emergency fund or someday, you know, these are the Dave Ramseyites. These are the people that are like, we can accumulate ourselves to freedom, which also almost never works either. But what you need to do if you want to take $10,000 and grow it into $1 million is do neither of those. Don't spend, don't save. You need to invest. So today's video is kind of like a 101 of how you become wealthy. And according to Investopedia, an investment, which is what rich people do to get rich, is an asset or an item acquired with the goal of generating income or appreciation. It's really weird, but some people literally make money just so they can spend it and have stuff. And whatever you buy, it loses value. Like you buy a PlayStation and then after a year it's used. If you wanted to resell it, you can't sell it for more than you bought it for, you'd sell it for less, right? That's true of most things. Like you drive that car off of the lot and you lose like 20% of its value the moment you drive off that car lot. Wealthy people become wealthy because they think, okay, well, the little bit of money I've saved up, I'm not gonna buy something that depreciates or loses value or is a liability. I'm gonna buy an asset. I'm gonna buy something that goes up in value. I'm gonna buy me something that actually makes me money. And this is kind of a cool concept because you buy something that goes up in value and all of a sudden feels good, feels like we're going somewhere. And that's a really important principle for you to understand if you're gonna take 10 grand and turn it into $1 million. So let's talk about this $10,000 that you worked really hard to save, and let's kind of clear the air on something that's really big. It takes time to take 10 grand and turn it into $1 million. That's a function of time. Like I had over $100,000 in my hand, and it's like, okay, like how do I take 10 grand and turn it into 100,000, and then how do I 10x that to take 100 grand, and basically turn it into $1 million? What I want to do is I want to show you the power of money over time as long as it is compounding. And I'm introducing a term right now, it's called compound interest. And it basically means that if my $10,000 goes into something that earns interest, then the next year, my original 10,000 plus the interest is now gonna keep growing. And the next year I get, even more interest, and it's my 10 grand now with that interest, and that keeps growing. And then before you know it, every year it exponentially becomes more, which means that this $10,000 can become $1 million in time. What I want to do is I want to talk about 4 different ROIs. This is a return on investment. This means that if I put my money into something, how long would it take for me to turn it into $1 million? And you know what? We're going to talk about this in terms of 20 years. 10 grand over 20 years, what happens with different interest rates? Let's start with the 401k, right? We're gonna assume that your 401k is averaging 5%. And so you take your $10,000, you put it in your 401k, which is like the stock market. And in this index, it's averaging 5% year over year over year. And over 20 years, what would you wind up with? Well, you'd wind up with $26,500. Okay. Not $1 million. So we're like, okay, so what's the lesson we're learning? Oh, a 401k is not a vehicle for getting rich because it took me a lot of time and effort to save up 10 grand. And if I put it into my 401k for 20 years at 5%, it only turns into $26,000. It doesn't even triple, right? Kind of sounds sad. Now let's talk about what happens if you could do something twice as smart as a 401k. Like the S&P 500 is a way of investing in the stock market that historically on the high side can average 10%. So it's like, okay, Kris, I take my 10 grand, I put it into the stock market, into the S&P 500, where I'm investing a little bit in each of the top 500 most stable companies. After 20 years, what happens to my 10 grand? Well, it's almost 7x. It's worth $67,000, which is like so disappointing because 20 years went by and it's not $1 million. It's nowhere close. It's only $67,000. But now we're starting to understand something about 5% and 10%. One produces $26,000. 20 years later, the other one is at $67,000. And it's like, wow, whether I do 5% or 10%, I'm screwed. And here's what I need you to understand. The financial markets, your financial advisors, these financial planners and your CPAs, they always talk about investments that range from nothing percent up to maybe 10%, which means that the market, 401ks, IRAs, annuities, the stock market in any shape or form, as long as it's a single digit ROI, this 10 grand is never going to become $1 million. Let me introduce you for just a moment to the concept of investing in real estate. I want to make sure we're really clear. Imagine for a moment that your $10,000 was a 3% down payment on a home that you lived in. This is called house hacking. So you basically buy the home, you live in one of the rooms, you rent out the other rooms, or maybe it's a duplex or a mother-in-law apartment, you rent the basement to a family, and now they're helping cover part of the mortgage, maybe the entire mortgage. And now all of a sudden it's like, wow, I'm living in this house for free based on $10,000. That's a real strategy that you can do today. But what happens in 5 years? Well, the house has gone up in value. Maybe it's gone up $50,000. So maybe you sell the house, you get your 10 grand back, you take the positive cash flow from having rented it out, or the 50,000 because it went up in value. Well, now you don't have $10,000, I now have $50,000. Well, I can roll this into down payment on one house, I can use the same 3% house hack on another house. Well, now I have two houses. Fast forward 5 years, you have 4 or 5 houses. Fast forward to year 15, and you might have 10 houses. This is a different strategy, and the question is, well, what happens if I take my $10,000 and I invest it in real estate? What is an ROI that real estate could deliver for me? Let's just assume for a moment that this real estate is averaging 26% a year. The reason why I say 26% is because I can't remember the last time out of thousands of deals where I made less than 26% a year on my money. So let's use that number. It just happens to be a magical number, because if you take 10 grand and if you put it into a vehicle earning 26% year over year over year for 20 years, that grows into just over $1 million. Notice that 26% is bigger than the 5% 401k or the 10% stock market, but look at how those performed at compounding on single digits. It wasn't good. There was no hockey stick. They didn't go up a lot in value, and that's because the ROI was too low and too much of a single digit to have a powerful compounding effect. But that's because real estate makes money faster than the stock market. All right, so how do we actually do this? Well, step one, it starts with mindset and education. Get a different financial education that society has given you. That's kind of part of what you're doing right here with me. I'm an expert in the space, and I'll tell you that 401ks, IRAs, annuity, stock market, those are all single digit ROIs. And so they don't compound meaningfully enough inside your lifetime. They can if modern medicine extends your life long enough to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 lifetimes, then it can grow into a meaningful amount of money, but it's just not realistic for today. So what you gotta do is get a different education. And if you're a subscriber on my channel, you're actually getting that education. Or if you pick up one of the books that I've written on how to grow your money or invest in real estate or buy businesses, that's another way for you to financially get your education. So imagine for a moment that you found a property for $250,000. Now I get that that's not gonna work in downtown New York and LA and other parts of the country, but in most rural areas, you can find $250,000 to $300,000 houses, and $10,000 is enough to be a 3% down payment. Buy the house, and then move a family in or get roommates and let them cover the mortgage so that you reduce your expenses and basically have someone else buying you a house. I get that you have to make some concessions because it's like, well, what if I want the house all for me? Then I'm like, then you pay for all of the house. But in this house hacking strategy, the house is not so much about like having a home, a place to live. It's about making a smart investment choice. And guess what? A year or two later, after that home goes up in value, you can get a home equity line of credit, pull that 3% down payment out, and go use it to buy another house. You're not gonna live in both houses, so you're gonna have a family that's basically renting out one house. You can move into the other house, do the same roommate strategy. Now you're living for free, but now you're getting paid. This is exactly how I got started. Then you use the equity between the two homes to buy a third home. Notice that the $10,000 is what you used to start the party, but now your houses are being paid off by somebody else, and the houses are now giving you the money to go buy more real estate. And that's all you're gonna do for 20 years. Now, I'm not saying that you need to keep moving, because after you've moved a couple of times, you now have enough properties that are growing in equity that 7 years goes by, you sell this house and you trade it for 2 other houses. And then you use that second house you bought, maybe you sell it and you buy a couple more. Well, now you have a portfolio of homes. You're not moving anymore. You're just putting families in these homes. And now you have more people buying you more homes. Now, as long as you're earning a 26% ROI, which in my experience is very easy to accomplish, over a 20-year span of time, that $10,000 now can turn into over $1 million. Now, by the way, it doesn't have to take 20 years. I decided to put that model on hyperdrive, and after I did a few homes, other people noticed that it was working for me, and so they started giving me money for down payments, and I kept buying more real estate. And that's a different business principle altogether, that when something works and you have a track record, other people want to throw in, and all that can do is create acceleration. So yes, I did retire at the age of 26 on 25 properties, producing $12,000 a month, and have now since gone on to transact thousands of deals. And I have 2,000 partners that I'm building real estate portfolios with. And in today's video, here's what I really want to inspire. You can save money, and you don't need to blow it. And you can house hack your way into a home or partner up with someone else that also has some money. And now you're in the real estate game accessing higher ROIs. Your likelihood of being a millionaire that way, really, really, really high. In fact, Stanley Thomas, who wrote the book, The Millionaire Next Door, said that the average person becomes an accidental millionaire by simply living in a home and instead of selling it, buying another home, and then later maybe a job has them move across town or across country and they buy another one. As long as you don't sell your homes, they're all gonna grow with you, and that's how a lot of people will have their real estate appreciate in value, causing them to become millionaires. I'm just telling you that you can do it on purpose. So now rubber hits the road, and let's tell the awful truth. I get it. The stock market is a lot easier. You just literally download an app, transfer your money in, you send it out, it's now sitting in the stock market. But if it's broken, because it doesn't work and it's not gonna make you a millionaire, then why would you do it? What if I told you, however, that real estate could be just as simple as the stock market? Well, now it is. I started a brand new public fund. It is called the Kris Krohn Kronos Real Estate Fund. And what I allow you to do is put in even as little as $3,000, not even $10,000. You can drop it in the game of real estate, invest with me. I'll do all the work. I'll find the best properties. And just so you know, we're making more than 26%. So click the link below, learn about investing in the Kronos Fund, or get in touch with me and my team. Maybe you want to partner with me. Maybe you're ready to get into real estate. In the links below, you'll learn all about it. And with that, let's go. Listen, I hope you enjoyed today's video, but you probably have noticed that we're starting to get into that taboo energy of like money, and no one really in your family likes to talk about it. I do, and so I want to talk about the 3 biggest financial taboos that end up hurting you financially, and then what you do to overcome them. Click right here, watch this video, let me show you.